so John, that's such a John Lasseter story, though. I mean, John Lasseter is an example of a guy that, because he was seen as this, goose that laid the golden egg, you watched it with Disney. Nobody would ever tell him no.
Hmm.
They'd just tell women, um, don't wear short skirts around him. He is going to put his hand on your knee. He is going to cling a little too tight. Like, don't worry, he's harmless. And that went on for years and years and years. And no one told the guy to stop. This guy he lived such a unreal existence of having his meetings. You could get a 2-minute meeting with him sometime. All his food was specifically, I knew somebody who was working as a production assistant who worked with Disney and booked these meetings. And, if you got 10 minutes with him, you were amazing. And any meeting he attended had to cater to his specific dietary and other specifications. He lived very similar to Elsa. So there's not a big surprise why he saw a lot of that there. But when you hear about someone who lives such a unnatural existence, it's not their fault that people stopped telling them no.
And that's my big thing with a lot of the stories I hear. Some of it from Me Too, some of it just bad breakups, some of it just little things where it's like, oh, well, they did this. Did you tell them not to? Like, did you set a boundary? It's like, and this is one of my biggest problems whenever I listen to Taylor Swift, is a lot of her breakup songs. Her most recent breakup, she has a song about it where she says, "Didn't you notice the storm clouds in my eyes?" And I'm like, did you tell him there was a problem, or were you expecting him to read your mind? I'm pretty sure she was expecting him to read her mind because that is very on brand for her. And I'm like, did you tell them not to do this thing? Did you tell them this was a problem? I'm like, I don't want to excuse bad behavior, but women also need to not be so agreeable in a way of like,
Well,
oh, I
let's
didn't say I was uncomfortable. Say you're uncomfortable.
let's face it, that's the way women are trained. Women are trained to anticipate needs, and so they think, oh, the ideal relationship is he anticipates my needs, I anticipate his needs. What ends up happening there is you end up getting a whole bunch of stuff. uh, Speaking personally, you're like, okay, I like this one thing that is remotely girly. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but it's acceptable to my family. Those are the only gifts I got for about 15 years.
Oh, was it Gem and the
And
Holograms?
no, well, it's amazing how all of a sudden the money came together for Gem Dolls when it wasn't there for He-Man. But, things like I really like Piglet from Winnie the Pooh. And
Oh,
so it's always Piglet stuff, always. And it's like, I legitimately like that, but I like other things too. And it just always does feel like almost like programming through gift giving
I
that
will
way.
say, I know a guy who really likes Batman, and for a long time, people just gave him Batman
Batman.
stuff.
Yeah.
And it got to a point when he and his wife first got together, she was like, yeah, this is great. And like the first time they met, she was wearing a Batman shirt. So they were like, oh, it's meant to be. But after they were married a year or so, she's like, I've just started putting the Batman stuff away. I don't want to see any more of it.
Well, Batman's a particular one too. I admit that I've gotten, the more Batman gets nihilistic and the more people defend it's gotten to the point where Batman isn't even really a hero anymore. He's just a violent rich man.
Yeah.
And the more that happens, the more I've drifted to characters like Superman, like Captain America, like, the more the Thor character. And I mean, Thor is more, God, I couldn't take him as a partner, but as a bud, oh shit, yeah. Playing Xbox and eating pizza? Yeah, he'd be a great bro. But he's at least a decent person who knows how to check his swing and isn't bloody eyeballs everywhere. And the more Batman has sunk into that creepy grimdark, as much as I like the Robert Pattinson movie, he is creepy and voyeuristic and doesn't understand boundaries. And if that's seen as something he needs to work on, great. But I don't think it is. And so, yeah, the more Batman goes to the dark side, so to speak, the more Star Wars goes to the dark side and gets more and more interested about anti-heroes, the more I want to see stories about nice guys.
Yeah, I'm so tired of stories about cynicism and just this nihilism and the cynicism we see so much. And I was watching a video essay last night where the guy talked about how if you keep deconstructing everything, you have nothing left.
Yeah.
And I think we very much see that with comics. We're seeing that with Star Wars. And someone pointed out that, in about 5 seconds, The Force Awakens undid everything the heroes had accomplished in the original trilogy. And it's like, yeah, that I hadn't really thought of it that way, but that did bother me. It's like, you like
Ahsoka was the same way. They undid Ezra's sacrifice and the reasons for it, just because, well, okay, I get they don't want to trademark new characters. They want to use existing ones. Money is money. But, that's another one where I thought the guy they cast as Ezra in Ahsoka was really, really charming. But again, I thought the lack of pushback on Sabine made it harder to root for her. That, the fact if there'd been fights and if it was pointed out that, all right, heroic people, your friends sometimes screw up, people sometimes lose their way, sometimes we make really, really bad mistakes, and everybody should not just be expected to take it. And I do think there is some of, I don't think Taylor Swift caused that. I think she's a reflection of the whole anti-hero thing. Of there's no room for a Prince Charming in the story of a protagonist like Taylor Swift, because she won't appreciate him. She'll find a way to dump him and then complain she's alone. You have to be open to that, for that to come into your life. You've got to attempt something, first of all, but also you have to be open to not, the whole thing of Prince Charming doesn't mean Prince Perfect.
No. And that is something that, you listen to enough of her music and you realize she's completely fallen for this Hollywood idea. And it's like, that's part of why she loves actors. There's a few songs where it's like, the guy on the screen coming straight home to me. And it's like,
Taylor Swift has become the girl in the short skirt from that song. She is not the girl. Yeah, she is not the girl wearing sneakers anymore. She's the girl. Well, when she wears pants at all, there's a lot of no pants costumes with Taylor Swift, but she is now the girl in the short skirt. And that evolution has absolutely stymied me. It's okay to be that sometimes. And that's the thing. She participated in separating women into the ones that wear short skirts and the ones that wear sneakers.
And here's the thing. It's Entangled. There's a line where Mother Gothel says, fine, you want me to be the bad guy? Now I'm the bad guy.
I love that line.
And Taylor Swift very much did that. It's okay, you want me to be the villain, I'll be the snakes, and I'm gonna be smashing things with, well, that was before Reputation, but it's, she leaned into it, and it's like, you have no one to blame but yourself.
I get that, because I do that, but that's just because I wasn't given a choice. She is, and that that's part of the reason why I object to turning villains into Hitler tofu, is even villains have a code.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the whole thing about the knight errant, which they confuse for the Prince Charming. Sometimes it is a prince, but the prince, the benevolent hero, always bargains with the crone witch. He doesn't just go in there and kill her. She gives him a challenge. He solves it. He plays along. You don't have to do the worst possible thing you can think of just because you're cast as the villain. It's lazy writing. The best villains have a code. They have things that you can reason with them. You can just because someone is a villain is just a role in a story. They're not necessarily horrendously evil. It just means they're the antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really misunderstood things about villains. And I do think because we misunderstand that about villains, we misunderstand what heroism means. We've gotten so obsessed with anti-heroes that we don't realize, yeah, these guys are fun because we see ourselves in them. But would we want to be on the receiving end of, Tony Stark never shutting up, or Doctor Strange's selfish, reckless narcissism, or Star-Lord? No, we wouldn't be able to stand that guy.
Mm-mm.
Why can't we get a story? Let's pivot to Bobby here. What's a Prince Charming character, Bobby, that you'd want to see in media?
Yeah, I guess more of Prince Philip, I guess. But also I did I meant to say earlier that I remember one of the reasons that Once Upon a Time really kind of got me was I'd been so used to the revisionist takes on fairy tales where it's like Prince Charming turns out to be Prince Charmless, or the princess.
I was raised to be charming, not sincere.
Yeah, and so I was just I remember being very intrigued by the fact that they just like gave the prince a character, and he still fought a dragon to try and help the woman he loved. And yeah, I don't know if I should say this on the air, but I do have scripts like that written in mind, and I kind of feel as though Jason from Power Rangers was sort of a classic Prince Charming as well. Because everyone's favorite character is Tommy, because he was the Green Ranger who was evil and then turned good, and well, he is basically a straight up good guy as well. But like the fan works tend to imagine him as more of an anti-hero, whereas Jason was the kind of the clean cut good guy. And it's very funny in the 2017 movie where he's played by Dacre Montgomery right before he played Billy in Stranger Things. So it's very surprising to see him as this like straight up hero, but. One things that really resonated with me about the 2017 movie is that even if it is like a slightly darker retelling or reimagining, Jason is still shown basically as a good guy because the establishing character moment with him is he's on the football team, and him and his teammates play a prank by stealing a mascot from an opposing team or whatever, and he ends up getting in a car crash, and the deleted scenes clarify he spent 3 days in jail, but he from the very start he won't rat out his teammates. He takes the fall for himself, ruins his career, and he has to do Saturday detention for the rest of the year. And his establishing character moment is when a bully picks on Billy, who's autistic in this version. Jason stands up to him. So it's sort of like, I like the fact that he kind of didn't need to go through character development to become a better person. It's like he already was a good person. It's just everyone else around him needed to see that.
I like that.
I do too. That already a good person, because that is the thing we see with a lot of, you mentioned Tony Stark and Doctor Strange and Star-Lord, where it's all, he's an asshole who needs to get better, even though what the movie thinks is get better isn't actually all that much of an improvement.
Right.
But it's like a guy who's just good. And it's like not even just male characters, but like a guy who's good sounds really nice when it comes to like
Oh yeah, I'm thinking. I think Brendan Fraser's character in The Mummy is kind of like that as well. It's
Yeah,
like
Song
the
hasn't seen it. So yeah, but it's
yeah,
true. It's
yeah.
true.
There's
He is definitely that face adventure serial character.
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
Yeah.
And it's like because the female lead is the sort of like bookish librarian who's like just really loves archaeology and all that sort of thing, and you see he kind of falls in love with her because of that. Like well, when you see it, you will see that they are like that kind of pairing that complement each other, and
Yeah.
they're a very good match.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I before Star Wars became this huge thing, it was always I didn't know many other people who preferred Luke Skywalker to Han Solo. And I could never understand that because Han Solo, I mean, Harrison Ford's very interesting to watch. He's great at the performance, but Han Solo's not a nice guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
even as a kid, I always preferred Luke.
I always preferred Luke. And Luke Skywalker is an example of somebody who sincerely believes in goodness. And it does cause him to make mistakes sometimes. And he does have to be saved by his friends. Every single character in every single of the main three, Luke, Han, Leia, has to be saved by the other two at some point. And you just know that part where Han Solo had to be saved by Leia out of the carbonite, people now would be screaming like, "Oh, Mary Sue, she had to save him." But that was just normal in those old adventure serials. I mean, people now are apparently up in arms because they dropped the term black girl magic in the Marvels. And it's like, good God, that's not something to get upset about. But everyone is, see, this is the problem, I think, to bring this in for landing last kind of round table. Do you think people just don't recognize the benefits of a Prince Charming now when everything is all about what you oppose as opposed to what you're for? It's all this factional warfare of anti this, anti that, pro this,
Yes, I think there's
So,
also oh sorry.
well, let's not
No,
go
go
first,
ahead.
Bob. Okay, but go
No,
ahead,
Bobby
Bobby.
first.
Okay, yeah, I think because I've just kind of noticed that I'm not sure if it's just like the youngest generations or just the way the world is now, but there seems to be a sort of like real misunderstanding of concepts like loyalty, and
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of encouraged to be an opportunist and kind of be selfish and kind of do what you can to succeed, whereas like for me, I've basically had to kind of cut off a lot of friends because I just realized, okay, the core values, like they don't have a sense of loyalty, and if they don't have a sense of loyalty, then I can't really be friends with them.
Yep. And that's really, really important in if you're a performer, because you're going to go through tough times. Everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
And you really need to know that God, when the TV show I was on got canceled, I remember people crossing the street to avoid us because they thought we
Wow.
were going to hit them up for work. Yeah, I will never, ever forget that. And the people that didn't do that, they earned something from me with that because I wasn't going to ask. But the fact that just all of a sudden, oh, wow, that stays with you. And that's what I see in some of these groups that require, this checklist and demand you openly state certain things. And every so often a friend will do something, it's not what they meant, they got hammered for it, and they're a good person. There may be this one thing they have to work on, or the context got stripped out of something, and the fact that the world demands that you abandon them because they did one thing that was unpopular, that really bothers me. Because I mean, these stories about strong women, hate to break it to everyone, the world does not like women who are not nice. And Ariel's weird. Ariel is considered an insult to her father. Ariel is irresponsible. And Belle, again, is weird. Why doesn't she just get married to the strapping man in the town? Even
Jasmine as well gets a bit of that as well.
Jasmine
Mm-hmm.
gets that. Merida.
Hmm.
It's all these, even Pocahontas, the Disney princess movie, which I mean is not politically correct anymore, but I still think.
Oh, I have I can have a tangent about that if you want.
Yeah, I know that's your favorite Disney princess movie, but I mean,
Not my
Really?
favorite, not my favorite, but in my top five anyway.
but even Encanto is about the kid who's the disappointment
Oh,
to
Mm-hmm.
that's
the
Mirabelle, is it?
family. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mirabelle. Yeah, she's kind of the dud.
And Louis,
And
oh, it's Isabella's the sort of princess-like one, isn't she?
Yes.
Hmm.
yes,
I still haven't
uh,
seen it, but
it's I like Encanto. It is there are parts that feel very corporate and very by the numbers, but I do think I mean the very fact that it is about the family disappointment when you are creating this culture where any aberrance, any going against the the herd, so to speak, swimming upstream, tried to avoid that one because of Little Mermaid, but the right metaphor, is incredibly punished, is punitive. You're not going to get these stories of individuals who find each other because there's no individuality. If everybody has to say the same things, everyone's interchangeable. Song, final. We'll go into our final thoughts, but final thought on this idea of the factions and the death of romance.
I think because we have become so cynical, and I talk about how people are so critical of the princesses and they're so reductionist about it. We don't talk as much about how that has hit the princes as well. But it really has. And I think criticism of the Prince Charming, we don't appreciate it anymore. And we don't see the value in a character like that. And I think that's really sad. And I think we've lost something by dismissing the idea of a Prince Charming. And I think we see it a lot in our society now.
Well, and I mean, a shining example of that is you mentioned Joffrey on Game of Thrones
Mm-hmm.
before, and that made me think earlier, and I didn't bring it up about the juxtaposition, the way Joffrey treats Sansa and the way Tyrion treats Sansa, and there's no wonder why people couldn't stand Sansa. They didn't recognize that you had a Prince Charming in Tyrion right there. And they kept Sansa's reactions the same as when he was this grubby little imp with no nose. And of course, people reacted differently. It's like, what are you doing, girl? He's
And
great.
that's why in the end I wanted them to get together, because she would have the Prince Charming but also have learned that it's not about looks. I thought that would have been a great way to wrap up her story, but
You know what my favorite part of the ending of Game of Thrones is? And this
hmm.
is on topic with the Prince Charming. When Brienne of Tarth finishes Jaime Lannister's story and she decides to be basically a Prince Charming about it. She could have written anything she possibly wanted in that book. And she decided just let it all go and be a mensch. And he served as, she was noble about it. And that's her. And that's why I think, I mean, bless Gwendolyn Christie played that character fantastically. But that was the right character call for her. It is not, I
Hmm.
think, something any other woman in that world would have done because George R. R. Martin loves motivating women by spite.
yeah, because like what Sansa in the first two seasons was defined by the fact that she would have compassion for the small folk, and
Yeah.
then they have her like just feeding Ramsay to his own hounds and then smirking about it,
Hmm.
And
and then nearly gutting her own sister.
I think everybody liked that moment because Ramsay Bolton was so fucking disgusting.
Yeah.
But, that there's a world that needed a couple of Prince Charmings that didn't die by season 3.
Hmm.
Who's the second one?
Well, Ned Stark was a
Oh, sorry,
stand-up
yeah.
guy.
Hmm.
Um, and
Rob Stark would have
Rob
grown up
Stark.
to be okay.
Hmm.
And I mean, Jon Snow just walking POV character, they never fixed that problem. Jon Snow never stood on his own. He was commanded. He was just a walking weapon from start to finish. And I really did think that they made a mistake not making Khal Drogo more benevolent at the beginning, changing that from the book.
Yeah, because the fact that they had cast an adult actress to play Daenerys meant it would have been so easy to change it from how it was in the book. But
well, in the books, it's not assault. In the book,
it's like she's 13 and she's consents and says yes in the way, well, but obviously since she is a child by our perspectives, that we see that differently. But the fact that they cast an adult actress means they could have just had it as a falling in love anyway.
Well, and she's taught to sort of dominate him through feminine wiles before they're married in the book.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, they really change that, and it makes I much would have preferred had he been more of that, he doesn't treat women badly kind of character, so that when he does die and she is without him, it would have informed Daenerys differently. It's not the story they wanted to tell. I think it would have been better that she's kind of walking dead until they're reunited in death. I would have preferred that as an ending for Daenerys, because then you can have her go completely insane, be the big conqueror, but then at the end get a bit of peace. And I think that's denied. Like I would have preferred seeing the dragon go off with the Dothraki horses and then showing the sun and the moon in the sky together. Boom, we get a bit of a happy ending. Nothing else has to change, but they lost that sense that and it's funny because Warhammer is really good at, in a very nihilistic world, people can still hope and people can still believe in each other and form bonds. And I think it ultimately, that was what Game of Thrones kind of lost, because they killed off all their Prince Charmings in season 3.
Because there are a lot of even though it is a very dark and bleak show, there are a lot of very sweet moments in there that there was unfortunately less of them towards the end.
Yeah, after they made the Battle of the Bastards, they thought that's what people wanted to see every single episode. They thought it was the structure of the sentence, not the punctuation mark.
Of course, then they forgot that people actually wanted to be able to see it.
Well, yeah. The print being too dark is a problem, but I mean, they were so
I hate how every time they do that, HBO comes back with, it was an artistic choice, because it's like we had
then
it
make
happen.
Another one.
Yeah, we had it happen after the long night. God, what a disappointment that was.
Right, yeah.
And then we had that House of the Dragon episode where everything was just so
everything was shot day for night.
Yes.
Yeah,
and it's like
cheesy.
They really have no excuse then.
No, and that I don't remember what exactly they said after the long night battle, but that the House of the Dragon one specifically this was an artistic choice. Well, it was a wrong one.
I remember
go back and re-edit it.
I remember the cinematographer said after the long night, he said that people just needed to readjust their TVs.
All those people with very expensive TVs like me are like, no, it's perfect. Shut up. Yeah. Okay, let's go this in for a landing. Bobby, thanks so much for joining us, being in the hot seat again, being our male perspective on topics. Any final thoughts on this?
I did have a point I thought of during the week that I may as well just say, since you've given me the opportunity to, because I've realized kind of recently that there was a lot of rom-coms set made during the 40s and 50s, kind of where it was basically about women who wanted to, their motivation was to marry rich husbands and be set for life, which Song said earlier kind of is definitely, it comes from the classic romance novels about the women having to marry well to secure their future. And I feel like kind of because the subversions that the Prince Charming started happening in the 80s with Into the Woods, kind of coincidentally after the women's movement, where it's like now the woman's expected to, well, not, the man's not going to take care of everything. So think the Prince Charming was maybe the society saw it as being redundant, but thinking it was mainly about the money when there's a lot more to it. And I would like for, stories to, realize the other values in, a good guy besides his money.
It feels like we have more analysis of media nowadays, but a lot of that analysis has become extremely reductionist.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's emotional reactions masquerading as analysis as opposed to actual analysis, because analysis is here's what worked, here's what didn't, not here's my hot take screed where I'm going to exaggerate for effect, and then cite death of the author when I just get something wrong.
Yeah.
And then there's the I think Anita herself popularized this, where it was like, this has a trope I don't like, therefore it's problematic, therefore it's bad for everyone.
Yeah, and
shut up and let me have my damsel in distress, darn it.
And she didn't even, well, sorry, no, I shouldn't go into a rant, but sometimes it didn't even have those tropes.
No.
Yeah.
Like she tried to claim Betty from Rugrats was a straw feminist.
It after a while, I think the brand got so powerful there that they just kept taking swipes that weren't warranted because people weren't going to get upset at more nuanced takes, and therefore people, wouldn't drive hate traffic to the whole service. But
and that's a problem with so many as well, not just her as well. Like sites like Cracked and BuzzFeed, where it's like they need the content, they need the clicks, so those hot takes are what basically generate the views. Because sorry,
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, even channels like CinemaSins would intentionally put mistakes in the videos because they knew that people commenting, correcting them would boost the traffic.
Well, if people want an alternative to that, they can check out the Better with Bob YouTube channel, because you don't do that. You have awesome commentary on shows like Charmed and Once Upon a Time, and you've done some Buffy stuff, right? But it's more horror stuff, and you're doing a lot more movies now.
Yeah, I mean, I just finished the script for an essay on why G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra wasn't actually that bad. So that's probably going to be the thing that gets me crucified. So
I love it, not that bad. That's what I love as the starting point.
I mean, I kind of think it's pretty great, but on YouTube you have to meet people where they're at.
I enjoyed it. Meeting people where you're at. Better with Bob YouTube channel. You can meet more of Bobby Calloway and Calidus Chronicles.
Yes. Song W. Erickson on Coffee, on Twitter, on everything.
Yes, Song is on Coffee. Or remember, you can sponsor topics on Two Women Talking. Song, as usual, you have the last word.
Bobby, thank you for being here. This has been an absolute delight.
Thank you.